and giving us the unforgettable Miracle on Ice. And today, it's home to Fort Drum and the historic 10th Mountain Division, the most deployed unit in the U.S. Army since 9/11, where I saw firsthand President Trump graciously thank and honor our men and women in uniform and sign the largest pay raise for our troops in a decade. Since our nation's founding, generation after generation of everyday Americans served and sacrificed to preserve and strengthen the American dream, the vision of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the idea that if you work hard and dream big, you can achieve anything you imagine. I believe in the American dream because I've lived it. Like millions of Americans, I grew up in a small business family where I learned the values of hard work and determination. I was the first person in my immediate family to graduate from college, ran for Congress to serve upstate New York, and am proudly the youngest Republican woman elected to Congress in history. I am honored to support President Trump for re-election because I know that he is the only candidate who will stand up for hardworking families and protect the American dream for future generations. Since his first day in office, President Trump has fought tirelessly to deliver results for all Americans, despite the Democrats' baseless and illegal impeachment sham and the media's endless obsession with it. I was proud to lead the effort standing up for the Constitution, President Trump, and most importantly, the American people. This attack was not just on the president. It was an attack on you, your voice, and your vote. But the American people were not swayed by these partisan attacks. Our support for President Trump is stronger than ever before. We know what's at stake in this historic election. Americans from all walks of life are unified in support of our president. It's why more Republican women than ever are running for office this year. We understand that this election is a choice between the far-left Democratic socialist agenda versus protecting and preserving the American dream. President Trump is working to safely reopen our Main Street economy. He understands that the engine of our country is fueled by the ingenuity and determination of American workers, entrepreneurs, and small businesses. Joe Biden wants to keep them locked up in the basement and crush them with $4 trillion in new taxes. We face a critical choice. Joe Biden's far-left failed policies of the past 47 years, or President Trump, who will stand up for the American people and the Constitution. I believe in the wisdom and spirit of the American people to elect the only candidate who is capable of protecting the American dream, President Donald J. Trump. Thank you to the North Country for the opportunity to serve as your voice supporting his re-election. God bless the United States of America, the greatest country on earth.
Good evening. I'm Madison Cawthorn, and I'm running to represent North Carolina's 11th congressional district.
Okay. All right. So notice how she mentioned that she's the youngest Republican woman elected into Congress, because the youngest woman elected into Congress was, wait, who was that again?
Someone
AOC.
named Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We love it.
I don't know. I want to do a little shake.
So that gives us hope, right? That gives us hope. That gives us hope. We got more, and we got Mondaire Jones. We got we got a bunch of people coming in. We got Jamal Bowman. Many.
Hopefully, Alex Morse. We got to fight for Alex Morse in Massachusetts' first district.
Hopefully, keeping Ed Markey in the Senate too. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't really have much feedback on. I never know how to say her last name. Is it Stefanik?
I don't know. You're asking me. We've done multiple stories and I can't pronounce anything.
I I don't really have much to say about her speech. I mean, it's more of the same, right? It's more of the American exceptionalism rhetoric. It's more about how we're the greatest country in the world. You look at the numbers and it certainly doesn't bear it out. And I'm specifically talking about, the pain and suffering that Americans have been experiencing, certainly under previous administrations, but the problems have been compounded by Trump's administration, right? The fact that we are the worst country in responding to the pandemic. So many Americans are still living in poverty. Tens of millions of Americans are still jobless and have lost their health insurance as a result of getting laid off in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, there's unrest everywhere. You see protesters getting gunned down by armed militia members. I mean, really, we're the greatest country in the world. There's a lot of pain and suffering happening in this country. There's a lot of chaos out on the streets. And the situation has gotten a lot worse under the Trump administration. But people want to hear about how great we are because it's the easy way out. It's the easy route. And,
Oh, I thought you were done.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was about to just make a joke. You're a good pauser, and so I never know when you're done. Like you take time before you speak, and so I'm just like I always accidentally interrupt you. I'm a stream of consciousness stalker. So yeah, no, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think Republicans though do want to hear about how great the country is. I think though material conditions on the ground for people are so bad right now and remain bad. That's hard to make that case, but my faith in the fact that the economy and material feelings and economic conditions are the number one driver in politics, it's been shaken with Trump's polling bump over the past few weeks, and it's not enough for things to just be really bad. There has to be a case made on the other side, and that's not going to happen under Biden.
Exactly.
And I'm almost glad that like the alternative would be him going out there more, which might be worse because his case is so weak. He's almost better as this amorphous blob that people can glom their hopes and dreams onto. Like, how when you read a book and the narrator doesn't really have many discernible character traits and you can kind of just imagine that you're that person. That's kind of how Biden needs to continue because the alternative is worse almost. I mean, it's pick your poison.
I mean, honestly, I hear what you're saying about Kamala Harris not seeming authentic, but I actually think, a smart strategy. First of all, let's just go back to the DNC. I know this is a missed opportunity. It's too late. Who cares about this commentary? But if you notice, there are jabs, pretty strong jabs against Biden during the RNC. And the DNC, I think, was kind of hands off and didn't go far enough in attacking Trump and calling him out on all of his failures. And to be sure, there have been many. I think that moving forward, if the Biden campaign really genuinely wants to win and make a strong case for why he'd be a better leader than Donald Trump, I agree with you. Don't send Biden out to campaign in person. I think it's a bad idea. Kamala Harris I think she's a decent speaker. I think that she can be a strong communicator. And if they're willing to adopt, even on like a symbolic level, a message of economic equality, a message of actually fighting for the best interests of Americans economically, they could win. But they're just not going in that direction. I mean, just this week, Rahm Emanuel was urging the Biden campaign to go even further in rejecting progressive policies like Medicare for all and the Green New Deal. Don't listen to Rahm Emanuel. Rahm Emanuel is a giant failure. He was a failure in Chicago. He was a failure over, I don't even know what Rahm Emanuel's up to today. Like, why are we even hearing from Rahm Emanuel?
He's an ABC contributor alongside Chris Christie, and they both left their positions with like 18% approval rating. I might be being generous there with their constituents, both of them. I'm gonna look it up. Keep talking.
Rahm Emanuel is a disaster, and like the idea that anyone would take him seriously or pay him to be a contributor. Contributor for what? Contributor on how to fail? Like, take it from me, I really sucked and you don't want to repeat my mistakes. But that's not what he's doing. He's like going on CNBC and speaking with authority about what the Biden campaign should do to move further to the right to attract Bush-era Republicans. No, thank you. No, thank you. That is a losing strategy. Look, Jeb Bush lost badly in the primaries, the Republican primaries in 2016. People are not interested in that brand of politics. They're just not. But Democrats are like, oh, look at that losing strategy. I like it. Let's take it.
Yeah. Okay, I looked this up because we want to talk about miserable failures. Chris Christie left being the governor of New Jersey with a 15% approval rating.
My God.
And Rahm Emanuel left in the low 20s. But they know.
Why would ABC hire journalists to do analysis when they can hire failed politicians to do it?
They make six figures to scream at each other and both agree that corporations are sick.
Oh my gosh. It's just so devastating. It's devastating on so many different levels. And this is why we can't have nice things. We don't really have a party representing us. And when I say us, I'm not even talking about leftists. I'm just talking about what the vast majority of Americans want. And that even includes Republicans. 69, I can't get over the fact that even after all this anti-single payer propaganda, 69% of Americans still want single payer healthcare. They're like, no, not buying it. Canadians aren't really waiting months to see a doctor. You guys are full of it. We want Medicare for all.
That's how bad our health insurance system is, that even with all of that propaganda from both parties, people are like, well, okay, the alternative, that's better. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I will never, ever get over this missed opportunity to defeat Trump in the middle of this pandemic. In a health crisis, a pandemic, with a candidate whose chief issue was healthcare, single payer healthcare. It's forever the greatest tragedy. I know. Sorry.
We have so many choices now with healthcare. Why would we give up all the choices we have? Right? I mean, all those tens of millions of Americans who lost their healthcare, they love all the choices they have.
I know. I wonder. Okay, sorry, we're just the genius country that ties healthcare to employment. It's really smart and not corrupt at all. Go on.
I do want to read the names of some new TYT members, and thank you guys. Girls Gone Political is one of our new members. Thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it. Epic Cookie is also a new member. Brian Miller, Florence Martin De Haro, Edgar Maldonado, and Eric Donley. Eric Donley, thank you so much, you guys, for becoming members of TYT. You guys make the show happen. Thank you for your support. I love all the comments that are coming in. I did read some super chat comments earlier, so I'm gonna read some members' comments now. Tina says, please do you, boo. Do it, Anna. Please fact check these liars. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would do otherwise. I would be worthless to this entire process if we're not at least fact checking what's going on. Sanders waving hands. From our member section says, mental health is taking its toll listening to this hate and lies. I gotta bow out after watching every evening this and last week. But thank you, Anna and Emma. Thanks for your detailed insights. Look, I didn't watch any of the RNC last night. I made a decision to go spend time with my nieces and my family. And that was the best decision I made. We all need to have some breaks, right? Recently, one of our viewers wrote in and was very upset with me because I've been very negative on the show lately. And look, I just want you guys to understand, it's hard to I have to do this every day, right? There is no escaping the news cycle. It's my job. And sometimes I'm human. It's hard to accept where we are as a country. It's hard to accept that we have no real representation on a federal level right now, with the exception of a few progressives in Congress. It's hard to see endless video of Black men getting shot in the back in the most cruel and disgusting ways, and know that there will not be justice in those stories. So I don't want you guys to think that I hate my job and I don't take it seriously. I am not in a good headspace right now. And it's because I actually care about what's happening in the country, and I feel a great deal of sorrow and despair, and I'm gonna try to, push through it. But that's where I'm coming from. It's not because I've given up or I don't take my job seriously. This is hard. And so I'm human, I'm not a robot. And I think it's better to get your news from someone who actually cares about what's happening than
guys,
from corporate.
We're all human beings on the other end of this, and Anna's been doing this for an incredibly long time and has provided the entire audience with a million insights on a daily basis. So I think everyone can cut some slack if she's actually feeling the weight of the news cycle, because I have been doing this she's been doing it far longer than me, been doing it for less time, and I feel it. And my family members have remarked on sometimes when I'm super negative, and it affects my mental health too. So we're trying our best.
Yeah, and look, the reason why I say that is because for anyone who feels like they need a break, I hear you. Definitely take that break. Go for a walk. Definitely go for a long hike. Don't take anyone with you. Go by yourself. Reflect, enjoy nature. One of the things that I've really enjoyed doing lately is going on this super long hike that most people in LA don't really know about, so I don't have to run into a lot of people. I hate crowded hikes. And have you ever witnessed quail, Emma?
No, but I just want to say this is a very LA-centric conversation about hiking because this doesn't happen on the East Coast, in city areas at least. Yes, I get it. New Englanders, shut up. Okay, keep going.
Quail are amazing. Like, they're the cute. They travel in packs. They don't really fly. They have this cute feather on their head. They're so cute. And so this hike that I go on, there are quail everywhere, and little bunny rabbits. And bunnies are cute. We all know bunnies are cute, but I had never really noticed quail before and how unbelievably adorable they are. So every time I go, I'm just like, where's the quail? Where's the quail? And every once in a while, I'll run into a pack of quail, and they're just like, oh no, hiker. And then they waddle away.
I'm looking it up. The common quail? The common quail. Quail.
It's in California, so I don't know if it's a specific kind.
Quail, Los Angeles. Probably is. Where do I buy a quail or a rabbit in Los Angeles markets? Is this Anna who posted on chowhound.com?
They're really cute. Anyway,
they are cute. I see. Yeah. So is this what brings you joy now?
I don't know if it's sad, but yeah, 100%. Like, if I had more time to do whatever I want to do, I would go on more hikes. So my point to our member is, don't feel guilty about it. I think that your mental health and your health overall is more important than anything else, right? So if you feel the need to unplug, do it. If you have the luxury of doing that, the privilege of doing that, please do it. Because if you're a member, you're obviously very much in the know, and you're doing your part. So take advantage of those moments of rest, because I think we all need it to keep the fight going. That's all I'm saying. Wow, that was a long tangent, but at least it gave me an opportunity to talk about my favorite bird. Yeah, well, I mean, God, I'm so happy that we had the opportunity to talk about quail tonight. I don't know what our coverage would be like if we didn't get to talk about Anna's favorite bird. But you know what? I'm happy I know about it now. I'm looking at Google Images. I'm on a desktop, which TYT generously provided for me, so I can have a big screen. I got one thing over here. I got the show over here. I can go crazy and look at pictures of while we talk. They're so cute. Okay, I wanted to read a few super chat comments as well. Okay, veterans reflect on President Trump. No, let's watch this. Fine, I'll read super chat comments later. Okay.
He's always there trying to take care of veterans, giving veterans what they need. Turnaround times have increased since Trump has taken over. You have to fight 15 years for benefits, but once he came into office, you had like 90 days, you turned your paperwork in, at least you had some kind of answer.
I waited months for a signature on a piece of paper to get a prosthetic leg fixed. And now it's a lot better turnaround.
But before, it was a 5-year waiting process to appeal. So how long do we have to wait for benefits?
I waited 20 years to file. Rapidly was approved for medical and then turned right around and got disability. I was thinking it was going to be several years worth of waiting to hear.
He's accomplished a lot in 3.5 years. And it helps the American people, and he has done a lot for veterans, for the middle class.
I chose to serve my country. If I could do it, I would do it all over again. Especially for this president. I mean, he's the kind of president you'd run through a brick wall if he asked you to.
Went through many presidents, but this one, I can say, is the best president we've ever had and ever will have, I believe.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me into your home this evening. It's truly a privilege. My name is Joni Ernst. I was raised on a small family farm here in Iowa, where I learned the importance of faith, hard work, and service. I worked my way through college, then dedicated my life to serving my country as a local official, a battalion commander in the military, and as a U.S. Senator. Service. It's more than a word to me. It's a mission, a way of life. It's what brought me to Cedar Rapids, Iowa in 2008 when I was in the National Guard. We saw historic floods that swept through the communities. We lent a helping hand to our fellow Iowans who were literally underwater. We thought we had seen the worst, but 12 years later, these same communities have faced an even more devastating disaster. The recent derecho storm. If you don't live in Iowa, you may not have heard much about it at first. While reporters here in the state were in the trenches covering the equivalent of a Category 2 hurricane, most of the national media looked the other way. To them, Iowa is still just flyover country. Houses, farms were destroyed. About 1/3 of our crops here were damaged. In some cases, these storms wiped out a lifetime of work, and yet Iowa farmers didn't hesitate to grab their chainsaws and check on their neighbors. Our farmers live every day with that sense of service, the stewards of the land, the ones who feed and fuel the world. President Trump quickly signed an emergency declaration for Iowa to provide relief. And of course, when President Trump came to Cedar Rapids, the national media finally did too. For years, I've worked closely with the president for farmers in Iowa and across the country. We scrapped Obama and Biden's punishing waters of the United States rule, which would have regulated about 97% of land in Iowa. In some cases, even puddles. It would have been a nightmare for farmers. The president delivered on major trade deals with Japan and the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. And he implemented the sale of E15 fuel year-round. That means more choices for you at the pump and more jobs for farmers in the heartland. This is something the Obama-Biden administration failed to do in 8 years. In fact, I can't recall an administration more hostile to farmers than Obama-Biden, unless you count the Biden-Harris ticket. The Democratic Party of Joe Biden is pushing this so-called Green New Deal. If given power, they would essentially ban animal agriculture and eliminate gas-powered cars. It would destroy the agriculture industry, not just here in Iowa, but throughout the country. When the pandemic hit, President Trump heard us in our call for assistance for our farmers. Knowing we have an ally in the White House is important. Folks, this election is a choice between two very different paths. Freedom, prosperity, and economic growth under a Trump-Pence administration. Or the Biden-Harris path, paved by liberal coastal elites and radical environmentalists. An America where farmers are punished, jobs are destroyed, and taxes crush the middle class. That is our choice, and it's a clear one. Thank you, and God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Burgess Owens. Shackled in the belly of a slave ship, an 8-year-old boy named Silas Burgess came to America to be sold on an auction block.
Okay, so I want to respond to something that Joni Ernst said that was so unbelievably ridiculous. So she floated the idea that Biden wants to end animal agriculture, just completely making things up. There's like no indication, no evidence of that whatsoever. But I do want to talk about Donald Trump's war on farmers, because if you've been following Trump's trade war, it's actually been pretty disastrous for soybean farmers, for instance, in the United States. So Forbes has a decent piece on this. It's titled "Amid Trump's Tariffs, Farm Bankruptcies and Suicides Rise." And it talks about how, his trade war with China in particular led to China deciding, we're just not gonna deal with the United States anymore. We're gonna go ahead and build relationships, trade relationships and agreements with countries that we otherwise wouldn't have even considered before. And so once that happens, guys, you can't go back, right? So it's really hard to undo the damage that Trump has already done, because trade relationships and partnerships have already been developed and these farmers get squeezed out. And yeah, the number of small farmers, I'm not talking about, agribusiness and these giant corporations. I'm talking about family farms. The situation got so bleak for many of them that the number of suicides increased. So for Joni Ernst to stand there and make that argument is not only a flat out lie, it's just so unbelievably insulting to the families who lost family members because of Trump's nonsensical, poorly thought out trade wars.
Absolutely, though. They're trying to capitalize and catch lightning in a bottle because Trump was so effective in railing against trade when he was running against Hillary Clinton in 2016. Now, hopefully for you, I just thought about this, Anna, based on our conversations before about if material conditions are on the ground are so bad, is that enough to override Biden's lack of a strategy, right? I worry that it's not enough time, that 3.5 years is not enough time for it to resonate with people. Oh, he didn't deliver on these trade deals. Oh, he didn't deliver on all of these promises that he made to improve my life. Because I think right now, much of the RNC and much of the Republican strategy is to just obfuscate and lie and then cross your fingers for 2024, because they're banking on, and what bothers me so much about politics is they hope you're stupid, and they're banking on the fact that you're not educated or you're not smart enough. And unfortunately, it's not because Americans are stupid. I don't believe that, and I don't buy into that liberal coastal BS. It's because they're not educated enough and there aren't enough outlets speaking the truth. But you see with young people, not to go off on a tangent, but the whole Joe Kennedy strategy where he talked about how he was basically being cyberbullied and stuff. I read this article about how Democrats are trying to appeal to young people online with Pokemon Go to the polls. Some of it's cringy, but then some of it, young people flock to Ed Markey. Why is that? And it's because young people are so educated on the policies. So there is hope because of young people online, but there's a huge gulf. Even when talking to people who are kind of neo-lib Democrats in my life about Black Lives Matter protests and stuff, what is seen on television is so different than the reality, which is what we see online.
You're so right, Emma, you're so right. In fact, the only thing that ever gives me a little bit of hope these days is just hearing the rhetoric from younger generations, certainly some millennials, but Gen Z. I mean, Gen Z is super radicalized to the point where they confront me, not personally, but based on like the messaging I hear from Gen Z, it forces me to confront my own political values and think outside the box a little bit. And let me also note, I know Gen Z is like super tough on millennials and they like to make fun of things that millennials like the fact that we're obsessed with hoarding plants. Or I'm a little sadder. Oh, we gotta go to this video. Anyway, Gen Z can like clown on us all they want because their political messaging is right. Let's watch what Laura Trump has to say.
Our country. I grew up in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. My parents were small business owners and worked hard to make sure that my brother and I had everything we needed, but not everything we wanted. My parents raised me to believe that in America, I could achieve anything with hard work and determination. That the opportunities available to me were limited only by the size of my ambition, that I should dream big, and I did. Those very dreams are what led me to New York City. I'd heard the adage, if I can make it there, I can make it anywhere, and I intended to do just that. Never in a million years did I think that I would be on this stage tonight, and I certainly never thought that I'd end up with the last name Trump. My 7th grade English teacher, Mrs. B, used to tell us, believe none of what you hear, half of what you read, and only what you're there to witness firsthand. The meaning of those words never fully weighed on me until I met my husband and the Trump family. Any preconceived notion I had of this family disappeared immediately. They were warm and caring, they were hard workers, and they were down to earth. They reminded me of my own family. They made me feel like I was home. Walking the halls of the Trump organization, I saw the same family environment. I also saw the countless women executives who thrived there year after year. Gender didn't matter. What mattered was the ability to get the job done. I learned this directly when, in 2016, my father-in-law asked me to help him win my cherished home state and my daughter's namesake, North Carolina. Though I had no political experience, he believed in me. He knew I was capable, even if I didn't. So it didn't surprise me when President Donald Trump appointed so many women to senior level positions in his administration. Secretary of the United Nations, Secretary of the Air Force, the first female CIA director, the first black female director of the Fish and Wildlife Service, and countless ambassadors, just to name a few. Under President Trump's leadership, women's unemployment hit the lowest level since World War II. 4.3 million new jobs have been created for women. In 2019 alone, women took over 70% of all new jobs. Female small business ownership remains at an all-time high, and 600,000 women have been lifted out of poverty, all since President Trump took office. He didn't do these things to gain a vote or check a box. He did them because they're the right things to do. 100 years ago today, the 19th Amendment was ratified, granting the right to vote to every American woman. And since that day, incredible strides have been made by women in America. From Amelia Earhart to Rosa Parks and Sally Ride, women shaped our history and are part of what has made our country the most exceptional nation in the world. I often think back to my 24-year-old self, driving alone in my car from North Carolina to New York City. And I think about what I'd tell myself now as we head towards the most critical election in modern history. This is not just a choice between Republican and Democrat or left and right. This is an election that will decide if we keep America, America, or if we head down an uncharted, frightening path towards socialism. Abraham Lincoln once famously said, "America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves." While those words were spoken over 150 years ago, never have they been more relevant. Will we choose the right path and maintain the unique freedoms and boundless opportunities that make this country the greatest in the history of the world? Will we remain the beacon of hope for those around the world fighting oppression, communism, and tyranny? The choice is ours. I know the promise of America. because I've lived it, not just as a member of the Trump family, but as a woman who knows what it's like to work in blue-collar jobs, to serve customers for tips, and to aspire to rise. When I look at my son Luke and my daughter Carolina, I wonder, what sort of country will I be leaving for them, for our future generations? In recent months, we've seen weak, spineless politicians cede control of our great American cities to violent mobs. Defund the police is the rallying cry for the new radical Democrat Party. Joe Biden will not do what it takes to maintain order, to keep our children safe in our neighborhoods and in their schools, to restore our American way of life. We cannot dare to dream our biggest dreams for ourselves or for our children while consumed by worry about the safety of our families. President Trump is the law and order president, from our borders to our backyards. President Trump will keep America safe. President Trump will keep America prosperous. President Trump will keep America, America. If you're watching tonight and wrestling with your vote on November 3rd, I implore you, tune out the distorted news and biased commentary and hear it straight from someone who knows. I wasn't born a Trump. I'm from the South. I was raised a Carolina girl. I went to public schools and worked my way through a state university. Mrs. B from my 7th grade English class was right. What I learned about our president is different than what you might have heard. I learned that he's a good man, that he loves his family, that he didn't need this job, that no one on earth works harder for the American people, that he's willing to fight for his beliefs and for the people and the country that he loves. He is a person of conviction. He is a fighter and will never stop fighting for America. He will uphold our values. He will preserve our families. And he will build upon the great American edict that our union will never be perfect until opportunity is equal for all, including and especially for women. Our 40th president, Ronald Reagan, said it best: the dreams of people may differ, but everybody wants their dreams to come true. And America, above all places, gives us the freedom to do that. It's up to us to keep this country a place where no dream is out of reach for our children and generations beyond. To my father-in-law, thank you for believing in me. Thank you for bravely leading this country, and thank you for continuing to fight every day for America. May God bless and protect the Gulf states in the path of the hurricane. May God bless our troops, and may God continue to bless this incredible country.
Okay. Quick correction, because neither one of us knew the correct pronunciation of this woman's name, but our trusty programming director Judith wrote in, and it's Stefanik. Okay, so in the future we will say her name correctly. Let's talk about the speech that we just saw.
And I think it's Lara, not to correct you earlier too, but not Laura, right?
It is Lara, yes.
God, messing up everywhere. I thought that's what Judith was writing in about. Judith missed that one, but I didn't.
Okay, so let's talk about Lara. I just want to make one correction, one fact check regarding Lara Trump's statement about how women are experiencing the lowest unemployment rate during the Trump administration. That's actually not true. So according to PolitiFact, the data show one period with a lower unemployment rate for women, a 12-month period in 1952 and 1953. That's about 66 years ago, which qualifies as nearly 70 years ago. And by the way, I mean, you can't, right now unemployment is record high because so many people, tens of millions of Americans, have been laid off, furloughed due to the pandemic, which Trump has handled poorly. But even if we were to give him credit with where the unemployment rate for women was prior to the economy collapsing in response to the pandemic, what Lara Trump said there was not true. I also want to note the unemployment rate for women has been falling again, before the pandemic. Since 2010, when President Barack Obama was president, the unemployment rate for women fell from 8.7% in October of 2010 to 4.7% when Obama left office in January 2017, a decline of 4 percentage points or almost half. Look, I mentioned that not because I think Obama was like this incredible, fantastic president who did incredible, fantastic things for women, but for Trump to take credit for what the previous president had started and succeeded in is just laughable and ridiculous. Trump, as we all know, doesn't actually care about how Americans are doing, what their wages look like. Every time he's spoken about how great the economy is, he's specifically talking about the stock market, which is inflated through the Federal Reserve printing money and handing it over to corporations, including right now during the pandemic. Corporations are doing great. Silicon Valley is doing fantastic. Everything is wonderful for them. But on the ground, when it comes to average Americans, we are suffering. Many of us are jobless. Many of us don't know what we're gonna do because Congress is feckless and has failed to pass another round of stimulus. So that's what the situation is on the ground. And I just wanna make those corrections before we talk about how it is that people like Lara Trump and the Trump campaign can incessantly argue that the unrest that we're experiencing right now would be something that we'd experience under a Biden presidency. Like, so let's talk about that, Emma, because it was something that you brought up earlier that I think is an interesting topic.
Yeah, let me just make one quick point based on what you just said there. When we're not talking about the politics of class, I don't care anymore. Like this stuff about women and a woman, female director of the CIA, Gina Haspel, who tortured everybody and broke the law and droned kids. Like, oh my God, can you imagine if we had a substantive Democratic nominee who talked about class and Medicare for all and policies that would affect people on a daily quotidian basis? This would be so marginal and seem so silly when they have Lara Trump, the child of the president's spouse or the president's child's spouse, coming on here to talk about that. Like, if you contrasted all of this with substance, it would be meaningless. But that's not what this is. Instead, it's just, two pageant shows basically. But I'm sorry, Anna, what was your initial prompt about?
I want to stay on that because I think that's such a great point, and I really hope our audience is smart. I hope you guys like follow us in what we're saying, because equality for people of all backgrounds, all genders, all races is important, right? Equality of opportunity. But I think what you're getting at, and I totally side with you on this. As a woman, I'm personally tired of being used as a political prop, when in reality, like, I just want to be able to pay my bills. I want to be able to know that there is a robust social safety net that my taxpayer money goes toward. Like, I don't want to hear platitudes, and I don't care about like, ooh, we have the first woman this and the first woman that. Great, that's awesome. But like, I don't really care about the aesthetics of change. I care about the substance of change. And I'm real tired of being used as a political prop for either political party. What are you gonna do to change the material conditions that single mothers are experiencing right now? What are you gonna do to change the material conditions of women? What are you gonna do to change the material conditions of people, right? Like, that's really at the heart of where a lot of our heartache and sorrow comes from. And so part of the problem with, and I hate using this phrase because it makes you think of horrible, dishonest people like Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro. And I don't agree with them at all on anything, okay? But the one thing that I do want to say is that we need to be careful in believing messaging coming from Republicans, yes, that's obvious, but also from Democrats who want to try to like pawn off like this visual of change by putting women or putting black people or putting Hispanics or putting whoever, gay people, whatever, any disenfranchised group, putting them in any position to make a point about like, look at what we did for women. Okay, but like Hillary Clinton being president would do nothing to change the quality of women's lives in America. I mean, it would be a better situation than what we're experiencing under Trump, no question. But I hate how everything goes to, okay, let's focus on like the identity stuff, right? Because that allows them to make it appear as if they're like pushing for change. But when it comes to the things that actually materially improve the lives of these groups of people, they're not willing to do what they're supposed to do. They're just not willing to do it because that means they would need to challenge corporate power. They're not willing to do that.
That's all it comes down to. I couldn't have said it better. You're absolutely right. And again, the left does itself no favors by pretending identity politics isn't a thing and pretending cancel culture, which even is like less of a phenomenon, but we saw with Alex Morse. There are ways you can critique the left and the fact that there is this moral purity that now seeps over into the right. Like they're basically using identity politics. Lara Trump just did it there. And using women as props. And I think part of what we were talking about earlier, there's a huge generational divide in who this appeals to. Like my mom, for example, would be like, oh, that's nice, like the woman stuff. You know, oh, a woman's in charge of this part of the government. That's great. Where I don't care. And I don't think anyone in our generation cares.
Well, I think Kamala Harris is actually a really great example of what we're trying to talk about, right? Because so when Kamala Harris was a prosecutor in California, she did things that we disagree with as progressives, right? So she had an opportunity to hold cops in California accountable for brutality and excessive force. She chose not to. She was boastful about her policy of criminalizing parents who had children who missed too many days of school. She was against marijuana legalization. She laughed about it. I bring up all these things because the explanation that we got from the Democratic Party was, well, what could she do? She was a black woman in this system, in this position of power, yes, but as a black woman, she had no choice but to play ball. Okay, fine. I guess that's the explanation, that's the excuse, but so how are things gonna be different if we have a black woman as vice president? Because I agree, I like the representation. I think that's great, but it shouldn't start and stop at the aesthetics of change. What's gonna be done systemically to improve the country, to improve the material conditions of black people in this country, to improve the material conditions of everyone in this country who's really feeling the economic strain of the neoliberal policies that have run amok for decades now. What's gonna be done? Right? So it's not about like, oh, I don't care about representation. No, I do care. I think that's great. But that's not even half of the equation. And I worry that people get tricked into the aesthetics of change without actually getting a commitment from our politicians that it's gonna go beyond the aesthetics, that we're actually gonna get change systemically and materially in our lives. Because we had a biracial president, and I remember voting for him in 2008, and I was excited about it. And to be quite honest with you, yes, it was exciting to vote in favor of a biracial president. But it was also exciting because I genuinely believed in his message of hope and change. And we didn't get that, right? So,
well, why didn't you vote for Hillary Clinton then? I was in the same boat as you. I wasn't old enough to vote when Obama was up in 2008, but
oh, okay, you're way young. Okay, got it. I'm just kidding.
How dare? But I mean, I remember having this conversation and thinking this way all the time. Like I would talk to people, and they were like, well, Hillary Clinton's better for women. I'm like, why? Everything this guy is saying makes way more sense to me. And the war is the craziest, most horrific, immoral thing I've ever seen in my life. And she voted for that. And so how many times do these politicians think they can trick us? We have the internet. We have the internet. I'm sick of it. I'm really sick of it. They really think so little of us. I mean, the Democrats especially. The Democrats think nothing of their entire constituency. They think they can trick you over and over again with substanceless drivel, and it drives me insane because we are all angry. Most of the Democratic base, the youth, the future of their party's angry. But okay, we're talking about, maybe it was earlier today or on the show yesterday, I forget, Trump's inability to see beyond the next few weeks and his short-term thinking. What about the Democrats' short-term thinking? They're kicking their entire base in the teeth for a win that's gonna dissipate in, I don't know, if Biden wins, how long do we hold on to the Senate? How long do we hold on to the House? Not long, in my view, not long. Same deal as Obama, just short-term gains and let Republicans win 75 to 80% of the battles until all our social safety nets are done and the country just collapses into the earth. I mean, I don't really know what to say about it at this point. So,
yeah, I just hate that we had, and look, if Bernie was elected, that's not the end all be all, that's one politician, right? So I think it is very important that we're seeing all of these congressional races won by progressives, true progressives who have basically given corporate PAC money a giant middle finger. I'm so proud of these candidates because one thing I will also say about them, aside from having a principled message and having true core values that resonate with their constituents, they put themselves through, and I have no doubt about this, absolute hell to run against corporate Democrats, to primary corporate Democrats. That process is brutal. And we talk about how weak Democrats are when it comes to everything from messaging to campaigning, but they are not weak when it comes to progressive primary challengers. They will use anything and everything to destroy them, to smear them, to present them as if they're honestly, like in the case of Alex Morse, we saw what happened. They tried to paint him as some sort of sexual predator. And then it became clear, thanks to the incredible reporting by Ryan Grimm and others at The Intercept, that this was nothing more than a hit job by corporate Democrats, by state Democrats in Massachusetts. And so the fact that they're willing to put themselves through that, and then they still win. In the case of Alex Morse, I mean, we'll see, and I hope he really does win because he's an excellent candidate. But it's not an easy process to go through. And I think the reason why they win is because people are hungry for real change. Jamal Bowman didn't win against Elliot Engel simply because he's a black man. I think it's insulting to think that. He won because his ideas were correct. He won because his policies resonated with people. He won because he understood that people in that district were hurting and were lacking the representation they needed.
Yeah, well,
and that's so inspiring. That's what I want. I don't want the aesthetics of change. I don't want the visuals of change. I want real change.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, again, these wins are in safe blue districts, and that seems to be the path right now. I think it's hard to look at. Anyway, the Justice Democrats, they made a tactical decision to really not support candidates in purple districts as much, and they were criticized for it, but I do understand because this is kind of what we're seeing now. We got Mondaire Jones, we got a bunch of others that we didn't mention, but it's anyway, I bummed myself out earlier.
No, but I think there really is hope because what you mentioned earlier, Emma, about younger people and how informed they are, honestly, because they literally have to be informed. I mean, it was hard for the millennial generation and it continues to be hard, but can you imagine being a Zoomer? Can you imagine? I mean, things are significantly worse for Zoomers. So they have no choice but to be informed and demand better. And that does give me hope. I think for the left, the most important thing to keep in mind is that people in positions of power, people with the means, corporate Democrats, corporatists in general, like they're not our friends. And they will try to manipulate us to divide and conquer. And I think that's the one thing I've been noticing happening over and over again. And I just want the left to be a little more savvy about that, right? That's not to say that, time to time we'll come across people who agree with us politically, but maybe do things that we disagree with. We should call them out. There's no question, right? I'm not saying that we should excuse poor behavior, but we should stop for a second, take a breather, and ask ourselves, is this an Alex Morse type situation, right? Is there substance against this person? Is there substance in these accusations against the person who we've aligned ourselves with, who we support, or are we being manipulated?
Well, that would get in the way of the person jumping to that conclusion, feeling really good about themselves and more moral. So,
yeah, and that's an issue. Look, the right doesn't care about appearing more moral. They're clearly immoral. We've given you so many examples of that. Just today, we talked about Jerry Falwell Jr. on the main show, and they're shameless. They're really shameless. And I'm not saying that okay, let's go to this. We'll pick up this conversation later. Okay. I want to see what this is.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.